Bonjour, Chris. How are you doing today?
Hey, Christophe, great to see you again. Been a long time.
I know it's been because whose fault is that actually? Fault. I mean, you've been on the road all the time for the last 2 years. It feels like at least.
Just trying to avoid you.
Well, it's not too difficult those days. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me. We're at Innovate Finance Global Summit 2019 in London, and you're actively contributing. You've got a panel coming up, so could you please tell us more about that?
Yeah, we're having a panel discussion around the prospects for the UK economy and how fintech might change in the next decade or so, with Giles Andrews from Zopa, Eileen Burbridge, Passion Capital, and also a gentleman from Citigroup. And I think basically it could be a long Brexit discussion, but it's not going to be because, to be honest, London's doing really well, UK's doing really well, regardless of Brexit. We've got 7 of the biggest unicorns in fintech, and likely to outstrip Silicon Valley racing in that context. And equally, 39% of European investment is going into UK FinTech. So the UK's economy is doing really well in FinTech, and I think it will remain that way.
So how controversial will the panel be in Chris Skinner's fashion?
So I didn't catch.
How controversial will the panel be in Chris Skinner's fashion?
As if I'd ever be controversial.
Never, unheard of. As you said, I mean, we didn't see the diaspora of talent going to the likes of Frankfurt or Amsterdam or Paris yet. And do you think that that's not likely to happen in the next 6 to 12 months?
I think the biggest concern, and this will be how we start the panel, is the talent pool. Because of freedom of movement of peoples, if that disappears, then it takes away a key attraction of the UK economy and the UK fintech economy. And we've already seen impacts in Dublin, Luxembourg, Berlin, Paris, of people who are taking the opportunity to say maybe it's better to relocate to countries that do allow free movement of peoples. What that'll be like in 10 or 20 years, no one knows. But I think to a large extent we'll maintain that capability of access at the very least, otherwise we'll be shooting ourselves in the foot.
Well, I think, as a Frenchman here, I haven't seen anything too negative so far in fintech, or at least I don't feel threatened. Maybe I should be. That's a delusional part of me as a Frenchman again. There's so many topics at the moment, fintech. You wrote a book. You're still a very prolific writer anyway on a daily basis. So is there any one trend that you think is even more exciting than the rest?
I think everyone's getting into discussions around real-world use cases of artificial intelligence and distributed ledger technology. I think a lot of people have seen the shine go off blockchain distributed ledger discussions. It's certainly gone way down the agenda of most conferences, but it's still bubbling away. And I think the reason it's gone down is because it's far more difficult than people thought. And the use cases are far more difficult because you're talking about digital identity, for example, which involves governments, businesses, and financial institutions. It's not simple stuff. For me, my main focus right now is on my latest project, which is I got fed up with people saying banks are stupid and they don't do digital. So I identified a number of banks that I think are doing digital. There aren't many, but there's some that are doing it quite well, like BBVA, ING, JP Morgan Chase. So I've been interviewing them all to find out what we can learn from them. And so far I've got 30 lessons. It's growing every day.
30 lessons. Any bank based in Asia? Likes of DBS? Or?
DBS is part of the project, as is China Merchants Bank in Shanghai. And what's been interesting is that in every single case, you need to have leadership that actually drives change. And I think an awful lot of bank leadership is just not really understood what digital means. They think it's a project or a function or something they slap on as a channel, rather than some fundamental change to the business model and structure of the bank. But these guys all get it. They all know it's fundamental transformation and change. And the whole of the organisation is behind that change, not just the CEO. And it's been quite critical, fundamental change. You know, DBS 10 years, BBVA 20 years. So it's been going on for a while.
So am I correct to think that you're spending a lot of time those days talking to the C-suite, senior management, to make them fully understand and appreciate why it's essential to focus on digital and change the way they interact with customers?
I spend most of my time, if I'm honest, going around different events and conferences, as well as internal meetings within the financial institutions, and also mentoring and talking with quite a lot of the fintech companies. And I got to the stage about the end of last year where I think I did far too many air miles. I don't know what the total number was, but I was gold on 3 different airline networks and silver on a 4th, and I thought, this is getting too much. So I've tried to calm down this year, and I'm just really focusing on how do we get get the banks to convert to digital and really understand what partnering with FinTech is all about, rather than just treating it as some alien thing outside the bank.
And so your 30 stories so far, and still, I guess, growing on daily basis or weekly basis at least. Is it going to be a book?
Yep, they're all going to be in the new book, and it kind of falls into four big things. The first theme is working out what to do, and typically all of these banks have gone and visited with Netflix, with Google, with Amazon, Alibaba and Tencent, and also Stripe and Square and some of the FinTech startups, to see how they're doing things. Then working out how to do it within their own organization. So having learned that these guys are all doing microservices architectures and agile, how can you internalize that, how can you implement that? Then actually doing it, implementing it, and then doing it better. And what's been critical, I think, is it's not an overnight change. I mean, all of them, you're talking 5, 10, 15 years to get through the cycles of change. And to get to the fourth cycle of change, it's typically a 10-year transformation. It's not an overnight transformation.
It's not, yeah. You're part of the Fintech Power 50. You're one of our influencers this year, so thank you very much. We're honored. And as you know, we're an annual program whereby we help 40 fintech and work with 10 influencers and the 50 to help them accelerate their global growth. How important are fintech programs to help, again, fintech on areas like marketing, digital, to help, again, fine-tune their branding and help them get the exposure they deserve?
Well, I think there's a lot of fintechs that have done quite well at headline grabbing.
Why not for the better sometimes, yeah, recently?
Well, it includes some of the startups. So I'd still claim that Monzo and Revolut and TransferWise are not that old. But I think what's happening is there's a whole bubbling group of what's called centaurs and ponies. So ponies are up to $100 million valuation, and centaurs are $100 to $1 billion valuation. So when you go outside the unicorns, I think particularly the early day startup companies, to have access to people like me and to you and to the network is really important, because we know a lot of the things that people have done wrong, and equally what they've done right. And also there's a lot of naivety and assumptions when people start out, which it doesn't really understand why banks, for example, are regulated the way they're regulated and why they do the things that they do. So we can fast track a lot of that stuff.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Chris. I'll let you go back and prepare for your moderation panel. And now I think it's time just to take a selfie together to replace my LinkedIn profile picture, as you mentioned before.
Merci beaucoup, Christophe, and au revoir.
Merci, Chris. À bientôt. Salut.